afternoon, tropical weather fans. This is Dr. Ryan Trushla with your Weather Tiger threat focus for October 3rd. Today's threat is Major Hurricane Matthew, which is located in the Central Caribbean as a Category 4 hurricane with sustained winds of approximately 140 miles an hour. Matthew has made the anticipated northward turn overnight and is on track to move over western Haiti and eastern Cuba in the next 36 hours towards a position in the central Bahamas by late Wednesday. Wind and surge in the greater Antilles will be severe, but perhaps the worst impacts, particularly in Haiti, will be from mudslides caused by excessive rainfall. It's hard to imagine a worse scenario for Hispaniola than a storm approaching from the south, with a huge convective complex to the east, and upwards of 15 to 20 inches of rain are likely in regions of orographic lifting, caused by the very mountainous terrain there. Unfortunately, Matthew's core looks to shoot the gap between the highest terrain of Cuba and Haiti, so I don't think it will weaken all that much over the next several days. It will likely remain at least a Category 3 hurricane on its path over the Bahamas. While model agreement through 72 hours is reasonable, the track forecast remains complicated thereafter. In general, we know that a ridge will develop over the northeastern U.S. in the midweek, which will move east by the weekend as a front rapidly advances out of the Midwest. At this point, it's a question of timing, as that front races Matthew to the coast, with three main scenarios in play. The first is that a stronger ridge bends the hurricane's track further west starting on Wednesday, bringing Matthew either close to or over the eastern Florida and or the Carolina coast late in the week. This scenario plays out on a number of the 0Z UK Met and Euro ensemble members, the means of both of which have shifted notably west in the last 24 hours. The 12Z GFS is also well west of the 6Z and 0Z runs, with the North Carolina landfall. The second scenario is that Matthew remains offshore, but is close enough to the front to eventually merge with a baroclinic low in the vicinity of New England. This would turn Matthew back to the northwest as it starts to lose tropical characteristics, and while it might not technically be a hurricane at the point of impact, Matthew could certainly still spread significant weather over a very broad area regardless. About half of the GFS ensembles and several operational GFS runs are showing this. Finally, if the ridge is on the weaker side or the front moves more quickly than expected, Matthew would hook east to the north of the Bahamas and remain out to sea. The 0Z operational Euro, and about half of the Euro ensembles, as well as the Canadian ensembles, support this track scenario. Choosing between these three general scenarios remains extremely challenging. Overall, given the trend in the models, I think the single most likely outcome is that the center of Matthew stays offshore the U.S., but not far enough to avoid major impacts to the southeast coast late this week. Matthew is likely to remain a very large and powerful storm through the forecast period, and is capable of spreading serious wind, rain, and surge impacts well away from the circulation center. As of today, I'd say there is about a 50% chance of an out-to-sea track, with around 15 to 20% chances of the Florida, Carolinas, or northeast U.S. landfall scenarios. One final X factor in the forecast is a tropical disturbance to the northeast of Matthew that is showing some signs of development today. None of the models do much with it, but if it strengthens unexpectedly as it moves northwest, it could weaken the ridge a bit and leave the door open for Matthew to turn east. It's too soon to know if that is just wishful thinking or not. Anyway, the upshot at this point is that the entire east coast from Florida to Maine remains at high risk of direct impacts from Matthew, and it's just too soon to rule out any outcome given the complexity of the forecast. But suffice to say, the westward trends in the models today are troubling, and risks are especially rising along the southeast coast. Keep it right here this week at Weather Tiger for the latest. Now you know the tropical threat for October 3rd. I'll be back tomorrow with another forecast discussion. In the meantime, this is Dr. Ryan Trushla. Keep watching the skies.